Hey, it's Dave from Cheapwinefinder.com. And today we're going to do something a little bit different. So normally I do companion podcasts for a review that I put on the Cheapwinefinder.com website. And today we're not going to do that. We're going to talk about why we buy the wines we do, why we choose which ones we do. We're talking about Trader Joe and Aldi's, both of whose wines get featured on the Cheapwinefinder.com website fairly often. You know, we actually, when we choose wines, we actually go to the store and pick out a wine pretty much based on what we want to write about. It's got to interest us to some point so we can go out and write about whatever it is. There's got to be something in there that, I think I can say something about this wine. And I do pretty well at Trader Joe's and Aldi's because it kind of fits into the whole Cheap Wine Finder, getting some bang for the buck, value priced everyday wines that are not snooty, but actually pretty good. And we're going to talk about why Trader Joe's and Aldi's. And here we go. And there's several reasons, and we'll start about now. One of the main reasons Trader Joe's and Aldi's is a great place for value-priced wine is because they're everywhere. They have stores throughout Europe, Great Britain, Ireland. They're in Australia. They're in the United States. They have over 10,000 stores between the two of them. That is a lot of buying and selling power, which with wine, especially value-priced wines, buying in volume, making wine in volume keeps the prices down. So they have advantages over any other really store in the United States. There are some, Costco is like the largest seller of wine in the U.S., because there's Costco's everywhere, and they tend to have wine that costs more than Trader Joe's and Aldi. I mean, getting wine under $10, you can find it, but the bulk of what Costco has is good prices on more expensive wines. And they are close, but Costco doesn't really have the European, the Australian aspect, and they don't have 10,000 stores either. And they're not pretty much focusing on value-priced wines, which is a good thing, because like I said, Aldi and Trader Joe's are two sides of what was once the same company. The same family owns it, Aldi North, Aldi South, and they split up. And in the United States, they're different, but they kind of do the same things in bringing brand wines in. And with a brand wine, there's advantages. I don't recall seeing any retail brands at Aldi, but I do know that Trader Joe's has wines that you will see in other retail wine shops. But what we like about Aldi's and Trader Joe's is basically the brand wines, because there's advantages there. When you get a brand wine where you have a winemaker, somebody make wine for you, there's advantages because you're not paying for advertising with these companies. Neither Trader Joe's or Aldi's advertises their wines. They don't market their wines. I read somewhere that the winemakers make between like 33% and 60% of the value of every bottle of wine, and everything else goes to every other stuff in between before it's sold. And a lot of that's cut away with Trader Joe's and Aldi's because they're going direct to a winery or a wine cellar of some sort, and it goes straight into their stores. There's a distributor, but you're not getting the full distribution costs, and the distributor's not taking any risks. So it's easier on the distributor. You get a better price. And when you go directly to a producer, wine producer, you're getting a better price there too. Because I'm not sure exactly about every single one of their deals, but for the most part, when you have a brand wine, you're paying in advance. I mean, it's not up to the winery if you sell it or not. I mean, it's your wine when you buy it. So there are advantages to Trader Joe's and Aldi's. They have a huge web of stores. They can get wines less expensively made for them. They have less costs involved, which keeps the price down when you sell it. And and they are using the wine to get people into their stores to get other sales, which adds to other sales too. So they have a series of advantages built in to make their stores a really good place to buy wine. And then we're going to talk about which wines. We're going to, I think, talk import wines because both of them have kind of cool import wines. So we'll get to that right about now. Trader Joe's and Aldi's, being German companies, have extensive ties with European winemakers. I mean, that's where they started. That's where in their reputation for bang for the buck wine in Europe is probably even better than they are in the United States because, Trader Joe's is well known for wine. Aldi's getting there. I've been impressed with a bunch of the wines I've had from there recently. But in Europe, they win awards. They're, you want a everyday bottle of wine that drinks better than the value or the price tag. That's where you go. So they've cultivated many European winemakers and companies who want to sell them wine because they can sell a lot of wine. With 10,000 stores total, even wines, from Italy that they don't sell in Europe, they might sell in Australia, they might sell in the United States. They can move wine, and there's competition to try to get their wines into Aldi or Trader Joe's. And one of the cool things about it is you're getting the wines that locals in Europe drink, but kind of like the export versions of it. In Spain, the number one white grape in Spain is Arian, and I think the number one red grape, or at least it used to be, is Bulbul. I mean, that's what everybody in Spain who's drinking an expensive wine drink, but you very rarely will find either one of those in Aldi or Trader Joe's. They're going to have a Tempranillo or Garnacha or whatever. You're going to get the greatest hits of Spain, not the one that everybody drinks, but it is the wine that locals, it might be the wine that someone in Ireland would drink of Spanish wine rather than what the people in Spain would drink. In Italy, like white wines, there's hundreds of white wines. Every village has their own grape, pretty much. And you're not going to get, you're going to get Pinot Grigio for the most part. You're not going to get these little crazy wines, though occasionally they do. And I don't mean crazy, and they're usually really good, but they're just kind of obscure wine names that we don't know that we probably should, and they're probably pretty good. And in France, you're going to get Pinot Noirs and red blends, and you're not going to get the really local wines, but you're going to, like I said, you're going to get the greatest hits of what the people in France, in Italy, in Spain, and all the other countries that Aldi goes to get. It's their wines, but it's not going to be exactly their local wines. But it's still kind of cool because you're kind of getting what they get. And, so a lot of times in retail stores, you're getting their export versions of things, wine that's actually made for the U.S. rather than being, rather than just being the local wine just shipped over here. And Trader Joe's and Aldi's does that too. But I don't think as big of an extent. You're still getting what people in Europe drink. So the selection is always kind of cool, something to look at. You're drinking local wines, sort of what they're doing, which is a fun place to get European wines, to get Italian wines, to get Spanish wines, to get the French wines, get the odd wines that you wouldn't find in a retail wine shop. Not that retail wine shops don't have a great selection of, import wine. They do, and they don't, they have wines that are wonderful, wonderful values and great prices on it too. But you're getting this kind of curated selection from Aldi's and Trader Joe's. And that's kind of one of the things I really like about it, because you're drinking like a European, sort of, not all the way. And then the other part that both of them are getting really good at is American wine, and we'll hit that right now. The one thing you may not know about the American selection of wines from both Trader Joe and Aldi's is they're not all Bronco wines. Everybody, when they first, started out, at least when I first became aware of them, Bronco Wines, who makes 2 Buck Chuck, made a great deal of the wines for Trader Joe's, and that's 10, 11, 12 years ago. And while they still do, you'd be surprised by the number of wineries making wines for both Trader Joe's and Aldi, big name companies who have wines on the shelves of the retail brands too, many wines. And that's kind of a fun part too. Even the Trader Joe's and Aldi's wines that are every vintage, you get another one, which usually those wines pretty much have the same costs that retail shops do. You always have to have a constant supply of grapes. You have to, those costs are kind of fixed. And that's the kind of things that Trader Joe's and Aldi's do. I mean, Aldi does that pretty much exclusively, where they have wines they might have wines that are good for 2 or 3 years and disappear, where they get a deal on something and it lasts as long as it lasts. And Trader Joe's does that too. Half the time I get emails from people. It's like, I love this wine. Where did it go? It's like, well, wait around. Sometimes they, there wasn't a big enough supply at the vineyard they got it from. They couldn't get leftovers. Wait till next year. But then again, Trader Joe's also does this kind of modern negociant version of wines. It isn't quite the classic negociant way of doing it. And in France, a negociant is someone who buys leftover wine from established wine companies. And it's all hush-hush. They don't say who did it, and they either sell the wine under their own label, or sometimes they buy it from another one and blend them together or what have you. But it's always at a bargain, and you have to trust them to buy the good wines because you don't know where they come from. But there is a price advantage to buying from the negociants. And whenever you get the Trader Joe's reserve wines, the platinum reserves, the silver reserves, or whatever, grand reserves, those are sort of negociant wines. They're not exactly that. They get it from different sources. And sometimes the people they get them from are pretty high-end wineries, sometimes boutique wineries. You'd be shocked. Sometimes I remember a red blend from a Napa winery that was selling for $60 on the winery's website that Trader Joe's was selling for $12.99. I remember a Pinot Noir that the company that made it was selling it for $99 a Magnum that Trader Joe's was selling for $13. You get those prices, and not everyone is that price, but that's where kind of the fun is, because you're getting these wines that you don't know where they're from. They're negociants. By this point, you kind of have a history with Trader Joe's, and you're getting these name brand wineries making wines. And, sometimes you don't know because some name brand wineries sold it to this company, who then contacts Trader Joe's and has this company make it, and it kind of bounces down the road a ways. But that's kind of the fun. I like that aspect of the wines, and you really don't. There are negociants out there in the retail shops. There's a couple of people who are doing that stuff, but it doesn't mean it's not as elaborate as Trader Joe's. There's a couple of people doing negociants. You can go to a retail shop and get a negociant wine, but you don't always. It's not always as upfront as Trader Joe's and as inexpensive as Trader Joe's. So that's, I really like that aspect of it, where I don't know I'm going to have a one-off wine. When it's done, it's done. Who is it? Where is it? Why is it? And, is it actually as good as you hoped it to be, and whatever. And Aldi doesn't quite do that as much, but Aldi also has their champagne last year was the best wine I think I had all year. It was a 1999 champagne, and then they had the rosé from Provence that sold out in about an hour and a half. So Aldi's has their crazy deals too, and their wines that are interesting. So that's it. You got this they have this huge buying power. They have a ton of stores where they can move wine, put it here, put it there. They're getting really good. They started out working with European winemakers, and like I said, their reputation in Europe is huge. In the United States, they're getting pretty good too. And just because you've seen the price, that's too cheap, it can't be any good. There are advantages that being a store brand is. You'd be surprised how many people have store brands. Pretty much every single grocery store any kind of liquor store chain of any size has some wines in there that's just their wine brand. Now, there's so many advantages to having a brand just made for you, because you're cutting out certain costs that are really substantial costs sometimes. And with Trader Joe's and Aldi's, I mean, if you want to know who made the wine, look at the back label, because it always says, what part of California or Washington or Oregon it was made at, and look at what city that is, and type in wineries from that city, and whatever the biggest one is in that city, that's probably who made it. So there are really good wineries making their wine. There's reasons why they have advantages of cost. I mean, they can sell a lot of wine. The more wine you can sell, the cheaper you can sell it. Wineries want to sell it to them. You get a wine in a Trader Joe's or a line of wine in Trader Joe's, you're pretty much you're going to make a profit that year, because they're going to pay up front. You're going to move a lot of grapes. Some wineries sell a lot of wine inexpensively, and that's how they make their profit. And then they make these high-end wines that makes a reputation. So, it's a win-win all the way around the board. So that's kind of why we go to Trader Joe's and Aldi, because you get wines in the right price point that we're looking for. They know how to pick out wines. The wines are usually pretty interesting. They seem to take care of it. I don't get that many bad bottles of wine. They're not overheating them. They're not doing bad things with them. They seem to move quick enough, so there really isn't any problems with that can go wrong. They're interesting. They're fun. The European wines are kind of like how they drink in Europe, and the American wines are some of the biggest winemakers making them wines. And that's why we pick out Trader Joe's. Like I said, they're not the only place to go. There's a lot of value-priced wines at retail wine shops, and we'll get into that too in a little bit. We'll go in a little different regions, what have you. But there's reasons why they're inexpensive. There's reasons why we like them, and there's reasons why they're pretty interesting. And over the years, they've gotten really good at doing what they do, and they have wines. You got to take a chance. You got to like what they do. But if you do like what their wines are, you're going to get a bargain. And that's what Cheap Wine Finder is all about. And that's why we go to Cheap Wine Finder and Aldi to find wines to write about a good deal of the time. And I think last year, 9 of the top 10 wine reviews on our website were from Trader Joe's and Aldi's. It seems like the rest of you like it too. So that's it for me on this one. Keep it cheap. Adios. And we'll come up with something pretty soon. And I hope everything's opening up. Everything's nice and sunny. And hopefully things are better. No justice, no peace. And I'll be talking. Bye-bye.